All right. Well, my name is Elizabeth LeConey, and myself and Renee Schreibman are happy to host tonight's Leadership Pools 101 webinar. We've had a lot of people asking about leadership pools, how they work, the best strategy, how to read the reports. So we're going to cover all of that tonight. And I want to preface by letting you know that most of you actually know my story, but for those who don't, I want to briefly explain to you that the first 8 months I sat as a consultant and I wasn't really interested in building the business. But when I got intentional, after about 8 months, I went fairly fast because I knew exactly where I wanted to go. So I hit executive. I started to do very well in the pools, but I want to be very transparent with you and let you know I really, in all honesty, didn't know what I was doing. I never had anyone explain leadership pools to me. Renee was in the same situation. We never had what you're getting tonight. We never had formal training. And so we've laughed as we've had to almost educate ourselves after the fact, learn lessons, figure out the best way to coach our teams. And so what you're getting tonight is really what's already out there in the back office and flyers, but we're going to explain it to you. We're going to help you understand how to read your reports. We're going to give you some strategies for doing well in the leadership pools. And we're happy at the end to answer any questions that you may have that we haven't covered. So there is a chat feature or a question and answer feature. If we're not answering a question that you have that you feel like we can answer, then between the two of us at the very end, if we have time, we're happy to answer that. So go ahead and keep any questions that you have in mind, and we're happy to try to answer those at the very end. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So why leadership pools? So Isogenics is extremely generous to have something called leadership pools. They don't certainly have to do it. They have an amazing compensation plan with the way that we get upfront money as well as the residual income that comes from the cycles. But leadership pools really do reward the right activity. It's helping your team grow leadership. It's a very perfect fit for a binary compensation plan. It's lucrative. You're about to see some of the money that can come from leadership pools. And it's a predictable share value, meaning that you always know what the share value is. So it does protect their associates from making sure that everybody is having that fair chance with a fair share value. This is just an example of how lucrative the leadership pools are. This is an example of 2014 bonus pool earnings. You can see at all levels, from a director all the way up to a 7-star or beyond 7-star. Can you imagine earning close to $300,000 just in bonus money? That's on top of the residual. That's on top of the PIB. Everything that you're getting, this is just extra bonus money. And that's what makes this, frankly, so fun and rewarding. And so people want to know, how can you make a couple extra $1,000s a month? How can you make several $1,000s extra a month in these leadership pools? So we're going to go through that. So there's different types of leadership pools that we're going to talk about tonight. The first one are director pools, executive pools, which we also call the 1-star pool, and then the 2+ star pools. And really this is 2 anywhere up to 7-star pools. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of terms that you're going to hear about tonight. As we go through the webinar, these terms are going to come up. And so while they might not make sense now, as we go through the webinar, they might make a little bit more sense along the line. So the first one I want to bring up that we will talk about, that most of you probably are familiar with, are team cycles. So basically, this is when one side, your left or your right, is accumulating 300 points or BV, and the other side is 600 BV, giving you a total of 900 points or BV, as we tend to call it. That once you get the 300 on one side and 600 on the other, that generates one cycle, which we know is $54 for every cycle. Net cycle benchmark, you're going to hear that a lot when you're talking about leadership pools, because how well you do is based on how you you exceed your benchmark. So basically your benchmark is an average. They take a certain amount of weeks and they average it to give you a benchmark. For PET, this is basically the 4 generations in your personally enrolled tree. So I'll give you an example. Renee is my 1 PET. She is someone I personally enrolled. And then she has enrolled Amanda Smith, who would be 2 PET, and so on. And so that's just the generations. You'll also hear it levels. I don't like to use the word level. I know Renee doesn't either. So in this example, in this definition, we're using the word generations. And we'll talk about 4 PET in just a bit. Reporting month, when you're talking about leadership pools, it's usually based on a calendar month, but there are some reporting months that are 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks. And so it's just basically the 4 or 5 week period that's used to determine your growth for the month. There is a leadership pool calendar in the flyer that's in the back office for if you are ever curious how the reporting months fall throughout the year. And then qualified net cycle growth, otherwise known as QNCG. This is a term I actually had to familiarize myself with just this past week. This is basically an equation that helps determine how your shares are generated. So the equation is basically your monthly net cycle growth, how much you're growing in your cycles, divided by the weeks in the reporting month, multiplied by how many weeks you qualified in that month. And we'll have examples. If that seems foreign to you, don't worry. We'll go through some examples. And I do want to preface, guys, that some of this stuff that we're going to go through tonight might not make sense to you right now, and that is perfectly okay. Some of you might not be in a position where you're even in leadership pools, and sometimes you have to even just get immersed in it to even understand what's going on. The hope here is that this educates you, and since we have this as a recording, you can refer back to it when it makes sense for you. But we do want people to understand how leadership pools play out and definitely understand the strategy for when you get into the pools. And so my hope is that this will help at least enlighten you and educate you. And if you're in the pools, at least help explain how you're making that money. So director pools, how can you qualify? And then more importantly, how do you remain eligible? The first thing is pretty simple. You must be on autoship. You must achieve director status. And then the key thing is you must remain paid as director every day of the week. So it's important to stay paid as director. You don't want to lose it one day. The reality is sometimes that happens. Sometimes we lose consultants here or there. It's beyond our control. If you achieve director and on a Wednesday in the middle of the week or whatever day you lose a consultant, then you're out of the pool for that week. This is a weekly basis that you qualify. If you can get back to director status by Sunday night, then that Monday you're back in the pool for that next week. The pool is open to US, Canada, Puerto Rico, Australia, and New Zealand associates only. And the goal in order to get shares and to qualify in the director pool is that you want to increase your average personal cycles by 2 over your previous month's benchmark. And remember, your benchmark is your average. They've collected your previous month and weeks cycles, and they've created an average, and they want to see that you're growing your personal cycles by 2 over that benchmark. So let's look at an example. This right here just shows a 4-week reporting period. Let's pretend this was for May, for example. This is going to show you each week. It's going to show you your personal cycles. So in week 1, you cycled 7 times. That's great. Your benchmark, the way that your benchmark in the director pool is determined is they take your 4 previous weeks paid cycles. So they look back into your history, the past 4 weeks before you hit director, and they say, okay, you've hit this many cycles this week, this many cycles this week, and so on for 4 weeks. And then they take the average, which they call the benchmark. So for this example, your average or your benchmark is 5. So for example, in week 1, you hit 7 cycles. Your benchmark was 5. So your weekly net cycle growth is basically the difference between your team cycles, your personal cycles, and your benchmark. So you grew by 2. That's where the 2 comes from. You can see that the same thing happens for week 2. You grew by 1. Week 3, you grew by 3. And week 4, you grew by 1. So then what they do is they add up your weekly net cycle growth for each week in the month, and that determines your personal monthly net cycle growth. So you grew in a matter of a month by 7 over your benchmark. So how is the pool paid out? Your monthly net cycle growth, which is the 7, is basically divided by the number of weeks in the reporting month. And then it's multiplied by how many weeks you qualified. So in this example, you earned your monthly net cycle growth is 7. There were 4 weeks in the reporting month, so it's divided by 4. And then you qualified all 4 weeks as well because you were paid as director all of those weeks. So you end up with 7 shares in this example. The way that you kind of determine how much money you're going to make is very difficult in the director pool. Basically, they put $75,000 in the director pool for the year. It really there's a couple of factors that come into play with your shares. It depends on how many shares you get. So obviously, the higher the share you get, the higher that you grow in the month, the more shares you're going to get. Means the more money you're going to get. But it also depends on how many people are in the director pool that month. So your share value is going to be determined by dividing the $75,000 by the number of shares earned by all the paid as directors for that month. The next pool that we're going to talk about is the executive pool or the 1-star pool. They pour $125,000 for the year into this pool. So how do you qualify and remain eligible for this pool? All associates, regardless of join date, can participate in this. The pool is open again to U.S., Canada, Puerto Rico, Australia, and New Zealand associates only. You must be on auto ship. You must be paid as executive every day of the week for a minimum of 1 week in the month. So it does give you a little bit of leeway there. And for this one, you must grow, again, just like the director pool, you must grow your team cycles by at least 2 during the months to qualify. So let's go ahead and look at an example of the executive pool. It's really pretty much the exact same, but I'll go ahead and show you the example again because this one gives a different kind of a way to look at it. So your benchmark in this situation, it's still taking for the executive and 1-star pool, it's still taking your previous 4 weeks paid cycles to determine your benchmark. So your benchmark in this situation is 7. You can see in week 1, you really, really grew. You did great that week. So you grew by 7. Your net cycle growth is 7. Week 2, you maintained. You got right at your benchmark. So you didn't grow at all. So it's 0 for that week. Week 3, this happens to some of us sometimes. We didn't quite hit our benchmark. We were actually -2 that week. And then week 4, we got back in there and we grew by 3. So really, in this situation, our weekly net cycle growth and then our personal net cycle growth, we ended up exceeding by 8. So we still qualified for the month. We did well. How is this pool paid out? It's basically exactly the same way. The way that your share value is going to be determined is really, again, in relation to how many participants are going to be in the pool. They do want to see that, of course, that you've increased your cycles by 2. So in this case, you've grown it by 8, so you do qualify. The third pool that I want to talk about is a little bit different. So the director pool and the executive pool, for the most part, work about the same. It's really about your personal cycle growth. When you move into the 2 and above star pool, it starts to become a little bit different because it's not just about your personal cycle growth. That becomes a qualifying factor. the way that you're going to actually get your shares has everything to do with your team. And that is a huge difference with these pools. You want to be on auto ship in order to qualify and remain eligible. You must be paid as executive for at least 2 full commission weeks out of the month. So again, this is even giving you more leeway. In order to qualify, let's say that you lose executive status 1 week. As long as you're paid as executive for 2 weeks out of the month, you can still participate into the pool for those weeks that you qualify. You must achieve and maintain paid as executive with 20 or more team cycles. So let's talk about 2-star for a second. 2-star is 20 cycles, 3-star is 40 cycles, and so on. So when you're in the executive pool, you're really talking about cycles anywhere up to 19. When you start cycling into the 20s, you've now entered into the 2 to 3-star pool. You want to grow your personal cycles by a minimum of 10 for the month for the 2 to 3-star pool, and a minimum of 20 for the 4 to 6 and 7 and above pools. So we'll look at this example. Oops, one more. You want to help your first 4 levels of personally enrolled associates, which is called our 4 PET, grow their team bonus cycles in order to earn in the pool. So that was what I was saying. It's not only about your personal cycles, but about your 4 PET's personal cycle growth. So there's really 2 components when you start talking about these pools. So let's talk really quickly about 4 PET and make sure that we all understand how this works. Because like I mentioned, when you start getting into these upper pools, every bit of your shares come from how your 4 PET is doing. So I want to make sure that my 4 generations in my business center are doing exceptionally well. I want to help them grow. I'm driving the lines. I'm helping them build the right way. When they get to a point where they're cycling a lot and they're growing in their cycles, it's going to help me develop more shares. And that's going to be the case for everybody in their business center. Oops, went a little too far there. Okay, how to earn shares in these 2 to 3-star and above leadership pools. So this is a different way to look at it. It's the same situation. The slide just looks a little bit different than the previous examples. But you, instead of having, so you do have a benchmark for your personal cycles. That becomes a qualifying factor. As long as you hit 10 over your benchmark for your personal cycles, then you qualify for the 2 and above star pools. Where your shares are going to come in is right here. You're also going to get a benchmark for your 4 PET. It's going to take a 13-week average of what's been happening in your 4 PET, the 4 generations that came after you that you've enrolled, or that you've personally enrolled and then they've enrolled. It's going to take an average of that. It's going to give you that benchmark. So for this example, your 4 PET benchmark is 85. So the same situation, you look at week 1, your 4 PET, the average, when they put it all together and they added it up, how many cycles your 4 PET did, it was 100. So you grew by 15 in week 1. Week 2, you grew by 35. Look at week 3. You didn't hit your 4 PET, which is out of your control in many cases, did not hit the benchmark that was developed for you. So you're negative 13. You do not qualify for that week, or you're now in a deficit a little bit. That's going to be subtracted out. In week 4, you rocked it out. Something happened in your 4 PET. They got excited. They got fired up. You grew by 65. So you can see for the total for the month, your monthly net cycle growth grew by 102. So in this example, you remembering that you grew by 102, this is how your shares are determined. Remember the equation that we talked about at the beginning about the qualified net cycle growth, or the QNCG. This is how your share is determined. You take the number of monthly net cycle growth, so how much your 4 PET grew, which was the 102. You divide it by how many how many weeks were in the reporting month, which was 4. You times it by how many weeks you qualified. So if you remember, let me go back. You remember, there we go. Remember this week right here, you didn't qualify. So you really qualified 3 out of the 4 months. So that's why, this thing's jumping all over the place. That's why it says times 3 weeks qualified. So that gives you 76.5, which rounds up to 77. So your shares for this month are 77. For every pool that you are in, there is a share value. Obviously, the higher you get up, the share value gets higher and higher. So you can do the math for the most part when you know how many shares you have to figure out how much money you're going to earn in that pool. So I want to give a real life example of how to read a report, because those are great examples, but the reports look a little bit different when you're looking in your back office. So this is a report. This is actually Meredith and Brian Wright's report from last month, I do believe. And I want to explain how to read these reports because they can be very confusing. So this is for the 2 to 3 star pool. That's why you see a 13-week benchmark right here. You can see what their 4 PET was doing every week, and you can see what they personally were doing every single week. So their net cycle, their benchmark for their 4 PET was 85, and their personal benchmark was 12. Okay, so there's 2 categories down here that you're going to read. The first one has everything to do with your 4 PET. So again, remembering that their 4 PET, when the system looked back and they looked to see what the average of the last 13 weeks was in their 4 PET, they determined it was 85. This is showing week by week. So this last month actually was a 5-week reporting period, so that's why there's 5 weeks here. It's showing how much they grew over their benchmark. They did extremely well. So for the month, they grew by 233 over their benchmark, which is incredible. Now, the personal net cycle growth has nothing to do with how many shares they get, but this is a qualifying factor. If you don't hit 10 over your benchmark for the 2 to 3 star pool or 20 over it for the 4 to 6 star pool, you are out completely. It doesn't matter how well your 4 PET does. If you don't grow by a minimum of 10 here, then you're out. So luckily in their case, they grew by way more than 10 or by 20. You can see here their personal benchmark was 12. Personally, their organic cycles, this is what they ended up hitting every single week. I want to point out here, there's a 17. That'll be important in just a second. 17 means a 1-star pool, right? Because anything above 19 puts you into the 2 to 3 star pool. So you can see for weeks 1, 3, 4, and 5, they participated in the 2 to 3 star pool based on their personal cycles. So at the very bottom of the report, it will outline your qualifications and how many shares you have. So in week 1, you can see, again, that they participated, like we just said, in week 1, 3, 4, and 5, they participated in the 2 to 3 star pool based on their personal cycles. Week 2, you can see that it says NA. And the reason for that is because they were playing in the 1-star pool. That was the week they got 17 cycles. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that the 1-star pool you can only participate in for 6 months. So this right here was month 7 for them. So they did not qualify this week because they had already played in the 1-star pool for 6 months. So that is why they were disqualified that week too. So down here at the bottom, this is going to show you how they come up with the shares. They have 2 different lines here if you happen to be playing in different pools based on your cycles. For the 2 to 3 star pool, you can remember that they had a growth of 233. That's basically the number of shares that they got, divided by the number of weeks in a month, and then how many weeks they qualified. So remember, they didn't qualify all 5 weeks. They qualified 4. It gives them 186 shares for the month. They get no shares for the 1-star pool because they had already played in it for 6 months. Okay. Another fun thing that I want to just point out to you that is generous of this company is something called double and triple bonuses. So Isagenix will double or triple your leadership pool money for the first 3 consecutive months of your participation in the 2 to 3 star pool. So what does that mean? In order to double it, if you're in the 2 to 3 star pool in your first 3 months, if you have anywhere from 15 to 20 cycles, Isagenix will double the payout for that month. So up to $5,000. And so what happens to many of us, I know Mayor and Brian especially this past month, is that their pay is outrageous because they're in their first 3 months of these leadership pools. And it's just a generous thing that Isagenix does with leadership pools. In order to triple your payouts, you must cycle anywhere from 21 and above in your first 3 months, and then they will triple it up to $10,000. If your shares are trebled or triple, the payout will be paid out at the exact same time as your regular pool is paid out. They'll be you can see on your report it will say double payout, triple payout. So it is obvious, and it does come at the exact same time as your other pool payout. Everybody is paid out monthly on pools, obviously, because you qualify for an entire month. And it's usually the second week of the following month. So let's go over a couple of FAQs. So how long can I participate in the director pool? You can basically qualify in the director's pool up to 3 months in their consecutive months. So the second that you become a director, the clock is ticking. You have 3 months to play in that pool. What if I lose status during the week, but get it back later? We touched on this earlier, but you must be that status, that rank, whether it's director or executive, for a minimum of a week and be paid as in order to participate in the pool. So if you lose it halfway through, then you're out for the week. You want to get it back so that you can play in the pool the next week. It's a week by week basis. You can't even lose a consultant for an hour. You're out for the week. That's just the way that the pools work. What happens when I hit executive? So let's say that you've been playing in the director pool, or maybe you haven't, you hit director, you lost some consultants, and then you went all the way back up to director. You skipped, you got your 10 consultants. As soon as you're recognized by executive, you're no longer eligible to play in the director pool, even if you have eligibility left. So let's say you hit executive status, but you drop down consultants, you can't go play into the director pool at that point. You're out of the director pool. You have to then get back to executive status so that you can play in that executive 1-star pool. How long can I participate in the executive pool? Again, a maximum of 6 consecutive months. This is, I'll be honest, this is something that I just learned last month when it happened, to Meredith and Brian. That is something that definitely you want to keep in mind if you are an executive, that you do have a time frame in order to be eligible to participate in that pool. Oops. This goes so fast, doesn't it? 1 second, guys. Sorry. What is the cycle cap for the executive pool? The executive pool, again, is when you're cycling up to 19. Sometimes you'll hear it called as the 1-star pool. We use it interchangeably. Once you hit 20, you're entering into the 2 to 3-star pool. How do I know which pool I can participate in? So the cool thing about this is you can really participate in multiple pools at a time. So if you're cycling over 20 or more times, anywhere from 20 really to 39, yes, 39 cycles, no, it'd be 59 cycles, then you're playing in the 2 to 3-star pool. Once you're hitting 60 plus cycles, you're really in the 4 to 6-star pool. So depending on your weeks, you might have a really high week where you're hitting 60-something cycles. That means you're in the 4 to 6-star pool for that week. You're actually getting a little bit higher share values for those weeks too. But then let's say the other 3 weeks you're cycling 30 something times, then you're playing in the 2 to 3 star pool that week. So you can be in multiple pools during the week. Your share values are just going to change based on which pool you are participating in. Where can I find my reports? I get this question a lot. You can find them in your back office. If you go into your back office and log in and you go into the contest and promotions tab, you will scroll down and you'll see a lot of things, but you'll see something called an executive leadership pool. You will also see one for director pool as well. And when you pull it up, you will see different categories. You will see the details where you can actually learn about everything that I'm talking about. I've pulled a lot of this from the flyers that are in there. You can see your previous month. If you've been participating in pools, you can see your previous month's report, and then you can see your current one as it's updating weekly. There's also webinars in there that you can learn as well. So at this point, what I want to do is stop, and I want to turn the call over to Renee Schreibman, who is my Rockstar 5-Star Golden Circle executive. And I want her to talk to you guys about strategy. How in the world, that's great, we understand how they work, but how can you do well in them? So Renee, welcome to the call, and educate everybody and enlighten them on how we're going to do so awesome in these pools.
I love it. You did such an awesome job. And I just wanted to also note, there is an option for Q&A, and at the end of the call, we will take some open Q&A for those who want to stay on and ask some questions. So feel free, as we are wrapping up the presentation for this evening, to go ahead and post some questions. You can type them in, and we'll try to answer as many as we can live on the line. And those that we can't, we'll type in some answers to you. So I wanted to share also with you guys a little bit about my story. And the reason why is when I started Isagenix, as Elizabeth mentioned, I had, Elizabeth still wasn't really very involved in the opportunity aspect of Isagenix. So I kind of just flew by the seat of my pants, and I remember her calling you, and I helped my first person open up their account. She's like, why did you put that person there? I'm like, I don't know. Nobody told me not to. Well, this is exactly why we want to coach and help and support every single person that joined us on this journey, because the very first person that I put on my team was on my focus leg. Okay, so we have a team leg and a focus leg. And the team leg, we consider to be your upline, or those who came in Isagenix before you can contribute to. So you're going to see when you go to bed at night, volume accrues on that side of your business. Well, I put this lovely lady on my considers to be called focus leg. This woman went crystal manager. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of business volume flowing through my focus leg, in addition to the volume that was coming already on my team leg. So right out of the gate, in my first 60 days, I wasn't even interested in the business or the opportunity that we have with Isagenix at all. I didn't really start to pick that up until I was about 4 months in. I was cycling, and I was cycling 3-4 times because she was sharing actively. And so why I'm explaining this all to you is because this actually has hurt me tremendously in the long run. And so people oftentimes ask me, well, why can't I put more people on my focus leg? Or why can't I make my husband a consultant? Or why can't I put this random person over there? Well, you never know who is going to catch the fever. You never know who is going to get so fired up about their first 10 days or their first 30 days and start rapidly sharing before you're ready to move over to that side of your business. And that's going to be part of the strategy discussion that we have. So in this case, my benchmark was pretty high when I started to enter into the director's pool, because my look back of the past 3 months had been a look back of me cycling pretty consistently. So my benchmark, instead of it being 0 or 1 or 2, was somewhere along the lines of 5 or 6. And so in order for me to earn shares week after week, I had to exceed that number of cycles every single week. And so that's why we really encourage you all to keep your benchmark as low as you can until really and truly you hit, I would say, executive. Director's okay if you just have started to grow that focus leg. The goal is really to go from director to executive as quickly as you can. I know that people are going to say, well, once you get into the executive pool, you're out of the director's pool. But one thing that Elizabeth didn't mention is that, The executive one-star pool has the very most money out of any other pool in the entire company. The share value is extremely high. So the longer that you can stay in the executive one-star pool, and the more amount of shares that you can earn in that pool, the more money you're going to see. So when you look at the leaderboard and you see on those corporate leadership calls, like the one we had yesterday, people are earning $5,000+ plus. Those are people that follow the strategy, that have been coachable, that have listened to what we have advised them to do by keeping their benchmark really low, really focusing on building out that one side of their business to keep their cycles as low as possible until they're ready to move over to the other side of their business and start growing it out and growing it out quickly, okay? So I really wanted to touch on that because that's super important. And unfortunately, that is not how my business started out. And you haven't seen my name in the leadership pool as much. I mean, I still make some money in them, but nothing like what Elizabeth or Delilah or Meredith and Brian or Amanda Smith have done over the past 6 months. And that's because they really were able to maximize keeping their benchmark as low as possible and then growing week and month after month to increase their share values. Okay, so that was my story. And I'm going to go back to talking about our team strategy. I know I've touched on this lightly over the past few minutes. So our team strategy is you're going to put one on your left and one on your right. Okay, your spouse or a significant other or a family member is always going to go on your minor volume leg or your focus leg, as we call it. And the way you can determine that is if you look in your back office and you look at what the tree looks like. If you go to, let's say, team, or you go to even enroll a new member, and you scroll down to the bottom and you see your tree, your name is going to be the first name in the box. If your arrow above your name that's dotted points to the left, your team leg is your right leg. If the arrow above your name points to the right, your team leg is your left leg. Okay? That's how you figure it out. People ask me this question all the time. It's as simple as that. Just look at your tree, and your tree will show you exactly which side is your team leg. Okay, so with that being said, your spouse, significant other, or whoever that holding position is going to be for your first month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, however long it takes you to grow out your team leg, is going to go on your focus leg. Okay, so in this case, my husband is on my focus leg. My focus leg for me is on my left leg. The next person I put on my right leg, which is my team leg. And the next 10 people went down my team leg, which is my right leg. I put actually 20 people down my team leg, and I'll get to a little bit further why I did that. However, the goal is to put at least 10 people down your team leg or at least 5 consultants. Now, when I say 5 consultants, I say that very, very conservatively because you never want to be sitting at just 5 consultants on your team leg. You never want to get to the point of where you are banking on one person to maintain your executive status, which is 5 consultants on your left and 5 consultants on your right. You always want to pad the bench. So when I say to have 10, a minimum of 10 associates on the team leg, I'm being serious. I typically, and I know Elizabeth is the same, we try to have at least 8 or more consultants on our team leg at all times so that we can make sure that we maintain a bench of consultants in case anyone happens to fall off. With that being said, I actually, I enrolled somewhere upwards of 10, I think a little bit more, and I moved over to my focus leg and I started growing out that side. And so I started cycling. I finally hit director, hit executive pretty quickly thereafter, which as I mentioned was really important. And I started to catch my team leg. So what does that mean? So every time you create a cycle of pay, you're going to pull 600 from one side and 300 from the other. So as you remember, you're always going to have one side that's going to be stronger than the other, just because other people, in addition to you and your team, are pouring into that side. What happened was I grew so quickly that I completely drained out my team leg side. So I was 0 and 0. I had no what we call banked volume in my business center. So I actually had to go back over to my team leg, which is what we try to avoid having to do. It's why we encourage you to put at least 10 people down that team leg in the hopes that they're going to duplicate. So each of those 10 people are going to tell 2 people, and then they're going to tell people, and they're going to tell 2 people. So it just keeps duplicating on and on and on, and it will maintain and sustain itself. Okay. However, I had to go back over to that side. So that's why I really strongly encourage everybody to follow this strategy because it works. It's a strategy that's been proven. It's a strategy that has been taught to us by our amazing leaders, Herb and Patty Cepeda, who has extensive network marketing industry experience. They understand compensation plans. They have studied compensation plans for pretty much every company in the multi-level direct sales network marketing industry to be able to determine what the best way is to maximize that. So this is how we're really going to maximize this amazing compensation plan that we have. So that's our strategy. Our strategy is, try to do one on the left, one on the right, a minimum of 10 down the team leg, a minimum, bare minimum of 5 consultants on the team leg. Shift over to your focus leg and try to grow as quickly as possible. Always share that vision of the you plus 2 and them plus 2. The other thing that I really want to stress and talk about before we wrap up and start to open up questions is rank advance. So many people are going to ask, okay, well, I want to rank advance. I want to get to executive. I want to be 1-star. I want to be 2-star. I want to be 3-star. I want to be 4-star. I want to be a 5-star. I want to be Jessica Johnson and be a 9-star. And that is amazing. You want to set your goals, put them out there. However, I want to be totally upfront and honest with you as leaders, as coaches, as mentors of people on your team, as well as Elizabeth and myself and Delilah and Jessica. We are here to help support you, and we want you guys to grow responsibly because we want to make sure we're setting all of you up for success. And the one thing that I want to stress to all of you is that it is not advised to push till your business is ready and can sustain the volume that you are going to push for. So when I say that, I mean, if you're cycling on average 20 times a week and you want to hit 60 cycles that 1 week, just remember that not every single week you're going to be hitting 60 cycles. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit 60 cycles that 1 week, and it's going to push your benchmark up substantially. And your business isn't necessarily cycling at 60 cycles or even close to it. You might be closer to like 22 cycles a week. So what that's going to do is that's going to increase your benchmark, which is going to make it that much harder for you to play in these amazing leadership pools with this huge amount of money and potential for income. So we want to be very wise about how you choose to rank advance, when you rank advance, whether or not you're a business center or even you are ready to sustain that type of volume, and we want to be able to advise you responsibly. So I hope that this has been beneficial. I know that there's some questions that have come up, and Elizabeth, what I want to do is I want to turn it back over to you, and this way you can go ahead and, was that okay? Was there anything else you wanted me to cover?
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
I echo and I agree with everything that Renee has spoken to in terms of how we build, as well as how we decide when we want to go to the next level. I mean, the beauty of this is that, again, when I came into this, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just, by the grace, built the right way, the way that we want you guys to build. I had a very strong team leg. I had a very low benchmark. It's why I did extremely well last year in the 1-star pool. I maxed it out for 3 months. So I did very, very well in the 1-star pool. And so I know how to turn around and coach my people. And the beauty of it is that it's duplicating. And I love seeing that throughout my team, through all of you. What I will tell you is that I do echo what Renee has said. When it comes to deciding when you want to go to the next rank, you have to remember when you start to push for that next rank and your cycles might not be ready yet, then your benchmark, you have to remember when you hit that 60 cycles, your benchmark is going to increase. And so it's going to be a little bit more challenging for you to get over or to exceed your benchmark. So those are things that to keep in mind as you get to this point. A lot of what we're talking about might feel very foreign to you. It might not be where you are in your business center. But again, the beauty of this is that it's preparing you, if you're not there, for things to look forward to, things to think about, and things to consider in the way that you build your business center so that you can do well in the leadership pools. So I do see some questions. Renee, I don't know if they're up on your screen as well.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer some of them. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the first question that we got was, can you repeat where you put your spouse? So your spouse is always going to go on your focus flag. So if you go into your back office and you pretend like you're going to enroll a new member, and there's many ways you can do this. I'm just giving you one. You're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to see there's a trait, and your name is going to be in that top box. Above your name is going to be a dotted arrow, and it's either going to point to the left or to the right. If your dotted arrow points to the left, your team leg is on the right, which means your spouse needs to go on your left. If your dotted arrow above your name is to the right, your team leg is your left, and your spouse needs to go on your right. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay, the second question was the number of shares. They understand how the number of shares are determined, but how much money is each share worth? And that is a great question, and that is somewhat of a mystery. So Isagenix actually doesn't reveal that amount because it is kind of like a number that is constantly changing based on the number of people that are in that pool. So, for example, you could have 200 people company-wide in the director's pool and 300 people company-wide in the executive pool one month, but then that changes the next month. So it's determined based on the number of people that are in that pool and the number of dollars that are available for that pool that they put into it on the yearly basis. So it does change. We can kind of get an estimate sometimes as far as what the share dollar value is based on the previous month's earnings for those who have been in those pools and they know how many shares they got and how much money they made, but it does consistently change. So there are no specific set amounts. What I will say is that the executive one-star pool, history has shown that it is significantly higher than any of the others. And when I mean significantly higher, I mean more than 10 times higher. Okay? So we're talking about a lot of money per share. So someone asked, what about those of us that are not on a strong team leg where 3 or 4 star is adding fat leg? Okay, so I'm going to kind of reiterate what I said before. It doesn't matter whether you're on a strong leg or a weak leg. Okay, Kathy Cooper said this herself when we were in corporate. Every single one of us has to build 2 legs, period. End of story. And so every single one of us has to grow a team leg, create a team leg. So what you need to do is you need to go ahead and create that team leg. It is wise and in your best interest to create that team leg based on who in your upline, meaning who enrolled you, actually is pouring into whichever leg that is. So you don't want to go and start growing out a focus leg and making that your team leg. You want to make sure that you are contributing to the team's team leg. Because at some point, you never know who's going to come into your business center, who could blow it up, that's potentially part of that team leg, okay? So you don't need a 3 or 4 star adding to that leg. When I started out, I didn't have a 3 or 4 star adding to my leg, and I still put 20 people down the team leg. And what it did is it just helped me create and funnel and fuel that team leg. And at some point, it did take off. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't, the first 6 months. My team leg actually took 12 months to take off. So hopefully that answers that question. But it doesn't really matter if you're on a strong leg or a weak leg. You have 2 legs, no matter what. And that's actually an amazing thing with this compensation plan. Most other companies, you have anywhere up to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 legs. I mean, you'll talk to people in other network marketing companies who will tell you, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Not only do I only have to grow 2 sides, but I have people pouring into my business center. I go to bed at night and I have volume building up in my business center that has nothing to do with me. I didn't even enroll anybody. So that's an awesome, awesome thing. Okay, so I answered those 3 questions. If anyone else has more questions or their questions didn't get answered, please let us know. I think so far we've got them all answered.
It looks to be the case. Yep, I think we have them all there. So,
we got one more.
We
got one more.
Oh, yeah, I see.
You want me to go back to it? Mm-hmm. Okay. What if you're one person on your focus leg, start sharing like crazy? As long as you do not personally enroll, will that hurt your benchmark number? Okay. So, unfortunately, that is the exact scenario that I explained that happened to me. So when I started, the very first person that I put on my focus leg, which was not my spouse because I didn't know that was what I was supposed to do, started sharing a lot really fast. So it jacked up my benchmark. And therefore, in the future, it definitely put me at a disadvantage in terms of the pools and the number of shares that I was able to earn in those pools. So unfortunately, while, in the pools, it's probably going to put you a little bit of a disadvantage. It's a fabulous thing because think about the money that you're getting right now. There's really no way to control it if you've already done that. And it's truly why we really try to coach everybody up front as to where to put people. I know people give a lot of pushback on it and they question it and wonder, why are we doing this? Why am I not growing my spouse? Why am I not growing 2 positions? But there is a method to the madness, and that is exactly why we do it, because we want to help you guys keep your benchmark low so you can make crazy money in the pools. And you think about it, 1 cycle of pay or 2 cycles or 3 cycles of pay is equivalent to $54 a cycle. So we're talking about between $54 to a few $100s versus $5,000. $6,000, $9,000. So you kind of have to pick you have to pick, do you want the money right now, quick and fast? Or are you in this for the long haul? And do you want to make a lot of money in the future? That's a question that comes up a lot. Okay, so we got that one, and thank you so much for the praise. Okay, explaining PET again. And so what I'm going to do is I will explain this briefly. There's a lot of questions coming in, and I don't want to keep us too late. But PET is going to be, for example, Elizabeth. Elizabeth shared Isogenics with me. I am one PET from her, so I'm one what we call generation. I then shared Isogenics with Amanda. So Amanda is 2 PET from Elizabeth. Amanda then shared with Melissa. Melissa is 3 PET from Elizabeth. And then Melissa shared with Sadie. Sadie is 4 PET from Elizabeth. So what happened is those 4 generations all make up her 4 PET. And 4 PET is calculated based on those 4 different people and their business centers and how many times they're cycling each week actually creates that 4 PET benchmark. So it adds up. If I cycled 40 times in a week and Amanda cycled 30 times and Melissa cycled 20 times, that's 90 cycles. That's all going to be part of Elizabeth's 4 PET, and that's going to contribute to both her benchmark and her growth. Okay, hopefully answer that one. The average is determined by the previous month that you qualify or question mark. Okay, so the average is determined by a 3-month look back. So they're going to look back at the past 3 months. And in the case of those who haven't been to Isogenics for 3 months, they're just going to look back as far as they can. So if you've only been with Isogenics for 2 months and you're in the director's pool or the executive's pool, they're going to look back at what your cycles were for the past 2 months or however long that is. So, but it maxes up to a 3-month look back in terms of how they average or how they create your benchmark. How do you see others in your downline as to what they're doing if you cannot see them on your placement tree? Okay, so the only people that you need to focus on are your own team, whether it's your personally enrolled or those that your personally enrolled have enrolled, or those that your personally enrolled have enrolled, okay? You don't want to get caught up in what your upline or your sideline are doing, because that is just extra, that's bonus. That's an awesome thing about this compensation plan. So I tell people, try not to get too caught up in that, because really you need to focus on yourself. You need to focus on sharing. You need to focus on supporting your own team. So the way you can do that is in your back office. You can go to team and then view my team. And if you scroll down, you're going to see everybody that you have personally helped open up an account with Isogenics. Next to their name is going to be a plus sign. You can click on that plus sign, and it is going to open up the next level in terms of, their next generation, which is going to show you who they have personally introduced Isogenics to. And then you can keep going and going and going. So you can actually see really far down into your team as far as who's sharing, who's consultant, where they place the different people. That's really where you need to focus your time and your energy, is looking at that view. Now, can you see other people and where they've come into your team? You can. There's different views when you do team and view my team, where you can actually see the tree. And there's an up arrow within the tree in itself that'll allow you, you can start at the very bottom person, the last person that's been enrolled, and you can press the up arrow and it's going to keep going up and up and up and up. However, I have found in instances I can't always see every single thing that's gone on or every single person that's been enrolled. So like I said, getting caught up in what other people are doing in terms of your upline or their team versus focusing on yourself and your business and where you're headed is probably not in your best interest in terms of, strategy and your attention and your focus. There's a lot of other awesome things that you could be doing in terms of helping out your own and supporting your own team. And then we have another question. PETs are for each person you have enrolled, who has enrolled, who has enrolled, who has enrolled. That's crazy money. Love it, Amy. Thank you so much for that enthusiasm. It is crazy. It is awesome.
It's crazy.
People don't realize how amazing this compensation plan is, how lucrative it is, how, if you've ever studied compensation plans with Elizabeth and myself, we're asked to compare compensation plans all of the time. And I've been approached by so many different companies regarding their compensation plans, regarding participating in their businesses, opportunities, and there is nothing that comes close to what Isogenics has. There's a lot of people that try to copy it or mimic it, but I will tell you that with the products that we have, the compensation that plan that we have, the bonuses, just the company itself, the culture, the support, there is nothing that can come close to what we all have here at Isogenics. And we are so very, very lucky. So I think that's all the questions.
Yeah, these are great questions. And thank you guys. And, you know, you might have questions after this or along the way. So we're both available, you know, to be that resource for you and help you with whatever answers you need. So just to recap at the very end, you want to be on auto ship, guys. I think that's a given. You want to go ahead and achieve director executive status so you can play in these fun pools. You want to remain paid as director or executive every day of the week to try to keep those consultants. Like Renee said, you want to cushion both sides so that you never get in jeopardy of losing your executive or director status. You want to increase your average personal cycles over the previous month's benchmark. And you want to, in order to play in those 2 to 7 star pools, you need to cycle over 20 times. That's for those pools. So guys, that is the webinar for tonight. We hit right at about an hour. This is going to be something that, you know, it's obviously recorded. Some of this stuff, again, might not resonate with you right now, but it's important because we want all of you to do well in the leadership pool because it's just bonus money. It's amazing extra income that comes through Isogenics. It's so lucrative. It's so amazing and fun, and we want to set you up on the best path and help you build your businesses so that you can play big in these pools. So have an awesome evening. Renee, thanks for all of your help tonight, and you're have a great night.
Bye.
Bye, guys.